Hey y'all. Okay, so we are starting a new series here at Coffee with Carrie YouTube channel. It's called Today Did We? And so today I'm going to be talking about that number one fear that we all have, and that is teaching math. Okay, so before we start talking about how to do math in your homeschooling and looking at today, did we do some math and what did it look like? I want to first talk about our math phobia because some of us have math anxiety. Some of us have a love-hate relationship with math. Some of us may love math, but our kids absolutely hate it, right? And so let's talk one-on-one. Let's have a come to Jesus conversation right now. Me and you, the homeschooling mama or dad, okay? So research tells us a child's success in math depends on two things. One, their experience with math, meaning did they have positive experiences or negative experiences? And that's self-explanatory. And we're going to talk about that second, okay? The second thing that determines whether your child will have math anxiety or have a love-hate relationship with math is the parent's attitude about math, okay? So you know that expression, attitudes are caught, not taught? It's true when it comes to math for sure. Okay. So, first of all, I want you to think about what is your personal experience with math? All right. So, when you think about math, what comes to mind? Do you break out in a cold sweat? Do you get all excited? Okay. So, what is your personal history with it? And if you want, go ahead and pause the video and actually kind of journal it down or write it down or jot down some particular memories that pop into your brain. I mean, no thought process involved whatsoever. When I say math, what comes to mind, right? Okay. So while you're thinking about that, let me share my story with you. I hated math. I was your typical math's not my thing. I'm not good at math. My brother was the math genius. My dad was the math genius, but my mom and I, we were not good at it. My experience with math started poorly at a very young age. Okay. I was teased all the time by the other kids because I just couldn't remember those stupid facts. And I remember in our third grade year, every morning we started with that time test and it was up on the board and we had 3 minutes to get through each of the families. And I was always the last one. I could never finish them. I got most of them wrong, the ones that I did. And I was just teased relentlessly. And then I'm dating myself, but we used to have those board races where the teacher would give us problems and we would race to the board and we would have to, be the first one to answer it. But our team depended on you. So every time I was picked on a team, everyone moaned and groaned. Anyway, not good experiences. So much so that around fifth grade or so, my teacher kept bringing my mom in and saying, look, she's just not good at this. She needs to do more of it. She just needs to practice more and then she'll be better at it. Okay. Yeah. Not right. But anyway, and so my mom got tutors for me and that didn't work. And so by the time I got to high school, my brother he was a genius, especially when it came to math. So he was my tutor, right? Okay. But as much as I love my brother, he was a typical guy or person who gets math and just couldn't understand why I couldn't get it, right? So that tutoring experience didn't go very well either. So much so that I failed high school geometry. I had to take it again. I barely got through algebra 2. And even though I wanted to be a teacher my whole entire life, it was solidified in high school that I was going to be a teacher because that was one of the only majors in college where I didn't have to take college algebra. I took math for teachers, right? So I pretty much determined my career based off of my math anxiety and my math phobia. Okay. So then I went off to college, got my degree in education. But here, this is where the miracle happens. This is how I know that the Lord is awesome and he takes ashes and turns them into beauty. One of the classes I had to take was how to teach math, right? And so I took this class and that professor was fabulous. And he pulled out all of these different manipulatives. He used real world examples. And all of a sudden, the light went on. I mean, literally, the light bulb came on. And I finally understood fractions and decimals and percents and equations. And it was just the way he taught it and how he explained it and how we were using it and how we saw that math was everywhere, that all of a sudden, I understood it and I actually kind of liked it. Okay. Then I moved to California, had to get my teaching credential here in California. In order to do that, I had to get my master's. Do you know what I got my master's in? I was actually teaching middle school math and science, first not by choice, but then the second year because by choice, because I absolutely love teaching math. Can go figure, right? The kid who failed geometry. So when I went back to get my master's, I got it in math education. Can you believe that? I mean, guys, when I tell you I was awful in math, I was awful. F's all the way through. Okay. But I loved it so much. I got my master's in math education, taught middle school math and science all the way through until I came home to homeschool. And then when we started homeschooling, I became an adjunct professor. And guess what I taught in the teacher credentialing program? That same class, how to teach math. And I did it the same way that professor did it for me, with the manipulatives and the real world examples. And it was just so much fun. Okay. So when I was a middle school math teacher, I think one of the main reasons I was quote unquote the favorite teacher was because I got that kid. So when that kid came to me and said, Miss Mayer, Mrs. D, I just don't get this. I don't get fractions. I don't get multiplication. I don't get division. And they're just crying and the parents are crying. I understood where that kid was coming from because I was that kid. So I knew how to come around and show them in different ways how to do it, explain it to them in different ways. And I had that empathy of, you're not stupid. Yes, you can learn math. It's just we have to get through this in a different way. Okay, so hopefully my story shares with you how it's possible, even some of us who are the quote unquote dumbest when it comes to math, we can get it. And if we still don't get it, we can still be good teachers at it or become learners and students with our own kids. Okay, so enough about that. I want to have you think a little bit more about your math anxiety, your personal experience with math. Okay. So, do you have math anxiety? So we're going to take like a short little, fun little quiz. I used to love doing these in magazines. Actually, as a kid, this was one of the only times I liked doing math. Okay. Was adding up my score to these little tests. Okay. So first of all, I'm going to ask you, I think it's 7 or 8 questions, and I want you to answer it 1 to 5, 5 being you strongly agree. Okay. So first of all, were you like me? I picked a career on how much math I would have to do. All right. So if this is not you at all, give yourself a 1. If it was maybe a little bit, maybe a 3. Or if you were like me, you literally picked out your college degree or your career path based on the lack of math, give yourself a 5. Okay. Next question. I don't like doing math in front of other people. All right. So even as an adult, sometimes I don't want to do long division in front of other people because I'm afraid I'm going to forget what 7 times 8 is. Okay. Because I always do. Who does it? Anyway, so score yourself on that one. I don't like doing math in front of other people. 1, you could care less. 5, oh yeah, I let someone else do the math. Like when you're sitting around trying to figure out the tip, right? Okay. At a restaurant with friends. Okay. Next question. I am afraid I won't be able to answer my child's math question. All right. So if this describes you, and maybe you're teaching a preschooler, yeah, who cares? But if you're thinking in advance, right, in years ahead, and you're thinking, I don't know if I could do this homeschooling thing in middle school or high school because I don't think I can answer my kids' math questions, give yourself a 4 or 5. Okay. All right. Next question. I have been told I'm just not good at math. Okay. I had a mom who told me that all the time. I had teachers who told me that all the time. It wasn't until I got to college that the professor said, hogwash, of course you can learn math. Okay. So give yourself a 1 if you've never been told that because you're really good at it, or a 5 if you were like me and you're like, oh yeah, all the time. I tell myself that. Okay. Next question. Some of my worst childhood school memories have to do with math. Okay. So if you were like me and you went to the traditional school system, what was that experience like, negative or positive? If you were homeschooled, maybe you still had some negative experiences or great experiences. Okay. So rate that one. The next one, I avoid situations where I might have to do math. All right. So before I got my master's in math ed, I easily and wholeheartedly gave my husband all of the bills and all of the budgeting because I didn't want to have to deal with it, because I didn't want to be the problem for us me misdoing the checking account and stuff like that. Okay, so score yourself on that one. And let's see, the next question. I have thought more than one time I shouldn't homeschool because I'm not good at math. Okay, so if teaching math is like one of your main reasons why you're thinking I can't homeschool through high school or I can't homeschool at all, then give yourself a 5. Okay. And then the last question, I tend to agree with my child when he or she says math is useless. Whether you think it in your head or you actually say it out loud with them. Yeah, it's useless. You're never going to use this again. So, but you got to do it anyway. Okay. Give yourself a 5 or a 4. But if you've never said this or agreed with your kid when they said it, you had some good reasons, give yourself a 1 or 2. Okay. All right. So add up your points. It's okay. You can do it super easy. Okay. So when you add up your points, if you have maybe 10 or less points, you're a math whiz. You don't have a problem with math, or math doesn't have a problem with you. Okay. If you have like a 19 to 11 to 19 score, you can handle math. You can teach it. It's not going to stress you out that much. Okay. Now, if you have a 20 to like a 29 score, you might be a bit fearful. And so you might have to deal with some of your math anxiety and phobia. Okay. But if you have a 30 or higher, math stresses you out. And we got to deal with that because remember, 2 things according to research, determine our kids' success and attitude towards math. And one of them has to do with the parents' attitude about math. Okay. So we really got to fix that and work on it. All right. So here are some tips just real quick to help you fix these math phobias you have and possibly not pass it on down to your kids, right? Okay. So first of all, make sure you do math together. Let your kids see you struggle and let them see you try and figure it out together. And even if that means you go to ChatGTP or you go to Khan Academy or you go to the back of the book and you look at the answer key to see how it's done, that's a great way of learning. Failure is a great way of learning. It helps you not do the same mistakes again, right? So let your kids see that you struggle with it, but have a positive attitude about it. Okay. And avoid self-negative talk. So not in front of your kids, especially, but, stop saying, I'm not good at math. I was just never good at math. Math is not my thing. Stop saying that to yourself and in front of your kids. Okay. Be more specific and a little bit more positive. Like, I didn't get it back then, but I really want to get it now so I can help you. All right, there we go. All right, encourage risk taking. So that one kid that freezes when they, are in a stressful situation and math might be stressful for them, they might just freeze and procrastinate and roll around on the floor and give you a temper tantrum because they don't want to do math. And it's probably because they feel dumb when they do it, or they've already convinced themselves they're not good at math, they're going to fail at it anyway, and so why bother? Okay. Or maybe their siblings are really good at math and they're not. But you got to encourage risk taking with them when it comes to academics and other things. Because like I said, we learn more from our past mistakes than we learn from our successes. Okay. So give them opportunities to fail, but then come back with positive reinforcement when they're done. Okay. And remember, our attitude is caught, not taught. So if they see it on your face, then they are also going to pick up on that. Okay. All right. So now that we've kind of taken care of that one thing that causes kids to have math anxiety or not do well in math. It's the parents' disposition about math. Now let's tackle the other one, giving our kids positive experiences with math. Okay. So first of all, let's take a look at these math standards. All right. Every state has them. Now the standards are, very arbitrary. Okay. Very arbitrary. Yes, there are certain things that every state says that kids need to learn, like in 3rd grade, it's probably multiplication, okay, whatever. But remember, the standards really are arbitrary because they're created by state bureaucrats. They're created by curriculum developers. They're not created by child psychologists or specialists in education fields where they understand how kids learn. They're definitely not age appropriate. Okay. So, and also when it comes to textbooks, math textbooks, that they are aligned with state standards. They'll often say aligned with California standards or aligned with, Texas standards or whatever. So The textbook will follow what the states are saying have to be learned at each grade level. And for the most part, those skills usually aren't age appropriate anyway. Okay. Now, the way most textbooks, actually all math textbooks work, is that the first like 4, 5, 6 chapters are actually review of the year before. Okay, so if your child is in 5th grade, the first 5 or 6 chapters are actually going to be review of skills they learned in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So it's going to be reviewing multiplication, addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division of whole numbers, multi-digits, place value up to the thousands or 100,000s. Okay. Then the middle of the book, the middle of their 5th grade book, will be the new material, the 5th grade material, which is usually fractions, decimals, percents, ratio, and proportions, because those things go together. Okay. And then the last part of the book, usually depending on the curriculum you're using, if it's Saxon, it's like the last 10 to 15 lessons. But if it's more of a traditional textbook like a Becca or Bob Jones, it's usually like the last 5 chapters again. Those are actually skills for the next year. So they're introducing skills they're going to learn in the next grade level. Okay. So if you look at your textbook that way, you really don't have to do the first couple of chapters, the first 4 or 5 chapters, because it's review of last year. And all of that review is going to be in the bulk of the chapters, the upcoming chapters, in the review problems, right? Because they have to know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide to do all that with fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay. So you could skip that, just skip over it and get to the meat of the textbook. And then don't worry about trying to finish your textbook at the end of the year, because if you run out of time, you really don't have to do the last 3, 4, or 5 chapters, because that's material they're going to learn next year when they move up a grade level. Okay. So look at the textbooks that way. Look at the math standards that way. And also the way textbooks are created is that they usually give kids about 2 years to master particular skills. And what I mean by that is preschool and kindergarten really focuses on numbers and counting and shapes. Okay. So you have pre-K and K to get through all that. And it's super easy to do. You don't even need a workbook for that. Kids just naturally learn how to count and stuff. Okay. 1st grade, they introduce adding and subtracting because they're the inverse of each other. And then they spend 2nd grade practicing and honing addition and subtraction, but now with bigger numbers. Okay. 3rd grade, they introduce multiplication and division because they're inverse of each other. And then they spend 4th grade really honing in those multiplication and division, but with bigger numbers. Okay. 5th and 6th grade. So in 5th grade, they introduce fractions, decimals, and percents because they are the same. They're different ways to say the same thing, right? So 1/2, 50%, and 0.5. Okay. So, and usually in 5th grade, 6th grade is when a lot of kids determine whether they're good at math or not, or if they hate math or they like math. And it's usually because of fractions, but let's be honest. Okay. So they introduce fractions, decimals, and percents in 5th grade. And then 6th grade, they practice that, but with bigger numbers, smaller numbers, with ratios and proportions, all the different ways that you use fractions, decimals, and percents. And then 7th grade is when they start to introduce pre-algebra stuff. But really, there's no such thing as pre-algebra. I would spend 7th grade practicing and building those foundational skills. So if they're still not really good at division, use 7th grade to really build that in. If they're still not good with fractions, really get good at fractions in 7th grade. If they're doing great in math, okay, then do a little bit of quote unquote pre-algebra, which is basically introducing integers, which is positive and negative numbers. It is solving equations, which they've already done in kindergarten, you know what I mean? Or 1st grade when they, remember you see those little problems and it says 3 plus apple equals 5. Okay, the apple is X. So they've actually been doing equations since they were in 1st grade and 2nd grade. So you really don't have to hone in on a quote unquote pre-algebra. I would use 7th grade to really practice and get good at those order of operations and adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing of all kinds of numbers, right? And then in 8th grade, some kids move on to Algebra 1 if they're ready for it or their state requires it. And some kids actually use 8th grade to still solidify their skills, because trust me, mamas, if your kids cannot add, subtract, multiply, and divide with fractions, decimals, and percents, they're not going to be able to do it in algebra with positive and negative numbers and with imaginary numbers. Okay. Could you imagine, and you probably can, doing a fraction on top of a fraction and they're still not good with dividing? Okay. So I would hone those skills in before moving on to Algebra 1. All right. So now that we kind of talked about the math standards, what I want you to think about, and because the math standards, like I said, are quite arbitrary, is I want you to come up with your own math standards. Okay. So I want you to think about and answer this question, especially if you don't like math, right? Okay. Why do you want your kids to learn math? Why do you think it's important your kids learn to do math? Okay. For me, I wanted my kids to know that God is a God of order and mathematics is full of order, right? There are rules that you have to follow. There's a certain pattern to the way things exist. Okay. Math also builds critical thinking skills. So if you want your kids to be critical thinkers, they really got to learn some math. Okay. Because math is critical thinking is built in there. If you want them to be good problem solvers, math is a great way to go about it. Learning about patterns so that they could use patterns to help them solve problems and to see, maybe if they're doing stocks or weather or whatever. Okay. I wanted my kids to be good stewards of the things that the Lord blessed them with. Sometimes that is money. Sometimes that's other things. I wanted them to be able to run a business or run their household, right? So these were the reasons we wanted our kids to learn math, not because the state said they had to learn multiplication in third grade. Okay. So if you need to pause the video here, and I want you to think about your standards. Why do you think it's important that kids learn math? All right. Now, remember, mathematical thinking is not just arithmetic. So, you know, the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. Arithmetic is just a small portion of math. It's the calculations. It's the computations. There's so much more to math than that. And we're going to talk about that right now. Okay. All right. So I want you to ask the question at the end of each day or when you're planning, if you have opportunities in the day for these things. Today, did we do math? All right. Now, when you look at it that way, yes. Did we do math today? It could be a math workbook. Okay, that's definitely doing math. But I want to explore maybe not necessarily the question, did we do math today? But maybe ask the question today, when did we not do math? Okay. So when you start to see that math is everywhere and you appreciate that and it doesn't stress you out, then you realize that even if my kids didn't do a math workbook today, they did a lot of math. They did a lot of problem solving. They did some critical thinking. They made decisions, things like that. Okay. So today, when did you not do math? All right. So first of all, I'm just going to throw out a couple of things here for you. If they had experiences today in any way, shape, or form where they had to figure out, does she have less of this? Does he have more of that? Is this equal? How much more time is needed in order to go to our activity, whatever? All of that is math. That's less than, equal to, all of that is math. It may not be on a worksheet, but it's mathematical thinking, okay? If there's cooking involved, there's measuring involved, there's shapes in the house and in the yard and the buildings around you. If they're doing art, they're drawing with angles and lines and shapes and curves. All of this is math. It may not be arithmetic, but it is math. And they might need to do some arithmetic in that, but it's still math, okay? If they're musically inclined, are they reading music? Are they playing music? Are they composing music? Music is full of math and integrals and fractions and things like that. They're dealing with sizes. So when they're putting on clothes and trying on clothes, and they're looking at different size books and the papers that they want to use for art projects and whatever, all of that is math. Directions. Are you in the car? Are you going somewhere? So when they're dealing with directions, that's spatial reasoning. That's they're trying to figure out the distance from here to there. How long will it take us to get there? What speed are we going? Miles per hour. Is it farther or is it closer than this? Figuring out mileage per gallon, right? Because gas prices, things like that. When they're shopping, I mean, I could go on and on and on, right? But you got your taxes, you got your sales, you got your discount, you got your tips when you go to the grocery, you got coupons, you got is this the best price? Do I have enough money? What kind of change should we get? Oh my gosh, if your kids are in sports, and here's just a few: golf, baseballs, volleyball, all of these playing pool, all of these things have to do with angles. And then you've got the points and you got the stats of the players. And if they bike ride or they ride their skateboards, you've got the slopes, slope, M equals whatever. That's slope, that's algebra, and air pressure of their tires, and the temperature outside, and money with finance and stocks and bitcoins and interest and loans and entrepreneurship if they start their own business. See how excited I am? Even if your kid is sewing or doing needlepoint or knitting or playing with Rubik's cubes or coding, all of that is math. So if your kids did any of that today, your kids did some math. Your kids did some problem solving, okay? Math even shows up in other subjects. I mean, just think about prepositions. It's about relations on top of, around, and all of that. That's direction. That's spatial problem solving. Science is full of critical thinking and with classifying and finding patterns, and then figuring out healthy diets, right? With your proteins and your fat and your grams, and chemistry and physics is full of math. And then history, you've got your dates and Roman numerals, and art, you're dealing in second dimension and 3 dimensions and lines. And of course, like I said, music theory is full of it. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing that if you ask the question, today, did we do math? You did. I am sure you're able to find at least one thing, but I know you're going to be able to find tons of ways that you did math today, even if you did not open up a math textbook. Okay. So another question to ask yourself, today, did we problem solve, right? Because like I said, arithmetic is the calculation, but there's so much more to that, to math, than arithmetic. So today we solve problems. All right. Like I said, it could be your math textbook, but look at it this way too. Was there some conflict happening in the house? Did they resolve the conflict? That's problem solving. Was there a decision that had to be made? Should I go do this instead of that? Should we buy this car or this car? Should I eat this protein bar versus this over here? Decision making, it's full of problem solving, right? Spatial problem solving, that is in itself maps and all of that kind of stuff. Building with blocks. Mental math, how many times are we mentally adding and subtracting and doing stuff in our head in public so that we can not necessarily, where we don't need the exact answer. We just need a roundabout, right? That's really the math we use on a regular basis. Critical thinking, again, for making decisions and stuff like that. Financial literacy, that's all problem solving. When they're playing strategy games like Clue and Code Names and Mastermind, all of that. Logic puzzles. I love the logic puzzles where you're trying to figure out who ate the pizza in with the pepperoni and all that kind of stuff. Those are so much fun. And then you've got discrete mathematics. That is where, you got a lot of the if-then. So there's more than one solution to a problem, right? So usually in a math workbook, there's only one right answer. But in real life, with problem solving and mathematics, oftentimes you can get multiple answers that will work for whatever problem you're trying to solve. You just have to look at things in a different perspective. Okay. So yes, did you do some math today? You bet. Did your kids do some problem solving? I'm almost positive they did some problem solving. Okay. Now, another way to get math into your day, or to look at it as you're doing some math, is bring in some math jokes or some math puns. Okay. So for instance, why was the math book so sad? Yeah, because he had a lot of problems, right? Okay. See? All right. So here's another one for you. What's a polygon's favorite dance? Square dancing. Get it? Okay. All right. Why do baby numbers eat? Or what do baby numbers eat? Formulas. Get it? Okay. All right. This is my favorite. What do you call a chicken who counts her own eggs? A math-a-chicken. Instead of mathematician, a math-a-chicken. Okay. All right. And last one. Why can't your nose grow to be 12 inches long? Because it would be a foot. All right. See how much fun this is? So tell math jokes, find math puns, make up math puns. Okay. Because, like, for instance, why was the math book so sad? And you give the answer because he had a lot of problems. A lot of kids will get that, right? But they may not get the one about the nose. Why can't your nose grow to 12 inches long? Because it would be a foot. So some of your kids might be like, I don't get it. What's so funny? And then when you explain it to them, they get the joke, but then you're also explaining math and you're explaining measurement. So it's a fun way to explain different things in mathematics. Okay. Two of my favorite books that you could get at Amazon is called Super Silly Math Jokes for Kids. That's a great one. And then Math Jokes for Mathy Folks, full of math puns. All right. So if you want, put one of those books in your morning time basket and every day tell a math joke. Okay. Super fun. All right. So that's another way that you can get over your kids' math phobia, your math anxiety, and also bring some math into your day without actually opening up a math curriculum. Okay. Another way to do it is to put the fun back into the fundamentals of math. Okay. So what I mean by that is, you guessed it, bring in some games, guys. Do some game schooling when it comes to math. All right. So first of all, you could do a math workbook, or you can maybe not do a math workbook page today and play a math game instead and go check, we did math today, right? So if your kids are learning about addition, they don't have to do a math workbook page Monday through Friday with addition. They can maybe do a workbook page on Monday and then play a fun addition game on Tuesday, and then maybe go back and do a page in their math workbook on Wednesday, and then play another fun game for addition or to review their addition facts on Thursday, right? So bring in some games. That is definitely a great way to build their positive experiences with math and to help them get over their math anxiety. Oftentimes, if you're playing math games with them that are reviewing skills that they've already learned and they're successful with, that will build their math confidence, right? And so they will have a more positive attitude when you pull out the new material. Okay, so look at it that way too. Now, any game pretty much can be a math game, right? So if any game you're playing, whether it's math related or not, the kids are calculating a score, they're keeping points, that's all math. If they're playing a game with dice, there's math. If you're playing a card game of some kind, that's math. If they're using manipulatives like magnetiles and Cuisenaire rods and base 10 blocks, all of that is math. Okay. If they're playing with puzzles, that's spatial problem solving. If they're doing riddles, math riddles, like with us, not C.S. Lewis, Alice in Wonderland. Can't think of his name. Who wrote the book? It'll come to me in the middle of this. He was awesome with different math riddles. Actually, Alice in the Looking Glass is full of math riddles. Okay. If they do mazes, if they do Sudoku, number puzzles, if they're playing Minecraft, if they're playing, like I said, the game Codenames, which doesn't have any math in it whatsoever. It's actually a reading strategy game. That's math. Mastermind. If they're playing 20 questions, all of that is actually mathematical problem solving. Okay. Some of my favorite math games, go to another playlist I have on Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Help, and check out my recommendation videos. I have a bunch of math games there. Okay. Also, if you go to another playlist at Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Help, I have over a dozen games you could play with just dice and cards or paper and pencil to review all kinds of math skills, from addition, subtraction, all the way up to algebra and order of operations and integers. Okay. So I've got tons and tons of those. If you subscribe to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org, you could get one of two things. You could either get my list of my favorite games, which there's a bunch of math games in there, or my list of math picture books, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Okay. But there's tons of math games that you can play, or board games that you can buy, that you can replace a math workbook with that day. Okay. All right. Now, another thing that you could do, these are super fun to do. Again, no math workbook page needed if your kids are doing some math magic tricks. Okay. So what do I mean by that? All right. So yeah, I'm going to ask you to do a little math. It's okay. You can handle it. It's fun. But what I want you to do, paper and pencil, pause it if you need to go get some paper and pencil. I want you to pick a number between 1 and 10. Any number. Just pick a number between 1 and 10. Got it? Write it down. Okay. Now, multiply it by 2 or double it. We can pretty much all double in our head. Okay. Got it? Now add 10 to it. We can do that. We all have our 10s. We got it. Okay. Got it? Now divide that answer by 2. So half it. Okay. I know. Okay. Now, last step. subtract your original number. So if your original number was 5, subtract 5. Okay. All right. You ready? Let me do my mind trick. Let me figure out. Let's see the number. Let's see the number, your answer you have right now on your page is 5. Now, if you did the math right, your answer is 5. And it should always be 5. Okay. So if you do math magic tricks with your kids, they're in amazement that it works every single time. You can find them online. There's great math trick books that you could get. One of them is called I Hate Mathematics by Marilyn Burns. But when they're doing math magic tricks like this, they're doing mental math probably, okay? If not, they're practicing their computation. But what did we do? We multiplied, we add, we subtracted, we divided, right? Okay, so we did all of the operations, but we did it in a fun way. And then the answer was always 5. And there's a mathematical reason for that. So if the kids are older and you want to ruin the magic, then you can show them why it works. Okay. So if you find these different math magic tricks online, they will show you why it works. They'll show you the algorithm or the formula as to why it works. Or if you get a book, it will show you. Okay. So you don't have to figure it out. All right. Another one of my favorite publishers is called Critical Thinking Press. I love using their mathematical reasoning for math curriculum instead of Saxon and something like that for the younger years. But anyway, they have other books that I absolutely love for problem solving that help kids build a positive disposition about math to get rid of their math anxiety and for them to actually enjoy math. And some of my favorite books that Critical Thinking Press has is called Math Analogies. Love those. Balance Benders. There's some algebra in there, but the kids don't even know it. Math Detective, where they're trying to figure out mystery numbers. Love that one. And then the pattern recognition or something like that. I love that one too, because patterns is actually not only mathematical reasoning, but it's also scientific reasoning as well. Okay. Now, another thing that you could do to help get rid of this math anxiety and to make math more fun, excuse me, is to read really good math picture books. There are so many out there. Okay. So like I said, if you subscribe to Coffee with Carrie homeschool website, you will get my list of my favorite math picture books that you can use with your kids. Now, the best part about reading math picture books is, again, you could take a break from your math textbook one day and just read some really good math picture books. And when you read them, they do such a good job of explaining simple to very complex math concepts, abstract concepts through story and through illustrations. So your kids don't even feel like they're doing math, but they're learning some really higher order abstract mathematical thinking. Okay, so let me just show you just a few of my favorites because there's so many out there. One of them is called Grandfather Tang's Story. This one is awesome because as grandfather is telling his granddaughter a story about seagulls, or swans, I think it is. He's using tangrams to tell the story. And so it's geometric principles as well as some scientific stuff. Okay. Another one I absolutely love is Mr. Archimedes' Bath. All right. And this one actually talks about water displacement, and which is also a science and math principle there. Anything by Eric Carle, but obviously books like this, The Grouchy Ladybug, this one goes through time and different things that have to do with season and time. Okay. Another one of my favorite series is Circumference and Circumference and the Round Table. This is another one in the series called The Dragon of Pi. I think there's 5 or 6 in the series. Love these because the kids are learning about circles and diameter and circumference and pi and volume and all that fun stuff, but through a story. Okay. Love it. Love Marilyn Burns. Anything she has written is awesome. I like this one in particular, the Dollar Word Riddle book. The book is full of picture clues to help them figure out what words add up to exactly $1. And so this one's a lot of fun. You could literally do a page a day for a whole year and the kids will have so much fun. And the premise is that A equals 1 cent, B equals 2 cents, C equals 3 cents, Z equals 26 cents, right? And so like you can figure out whose name is the most expensive in your family, things like that. Okay. Another really great one is called Raja's Rice. This one is a checkerboard. It's a folktale from India, but it's talking about exponential numbers and exponents. And so this is highly academic, but taught in a very fun, simple way through a picture book. Another one of my favorites, anything written by Greg Tang. He does these are called masterpieces, but every page has to do with a problem that they have to solve, that has to do with a particular master print. Okay. But Greg Tang has a bunch. So like I said, there are so many out there. I could do a whole video just on those, but instead go to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org, and register or subscribe to my website, and you will get the list. Okay. And then you can start collecting them on your own. All right. Now, what about math curriculum? So yes, I know a lot of you are saying, but yeah, I see that we're doing a lot of problem solving and mathematical thinking if we're doing all these other things. But what about actual math curriculum? I do need, as a teacher, because maybe that's your teaching or learning style, I need something that's on paper and pencil, or my state requires that, or my school district requires that, or my charter school requires that. I totally get it. Okay. So let's talk math curriculum for a minute. You want to if you're going to go with a math curriculum, keep in mind you really don't need one for kindergarten, first grade, not even like second grade. But I understand if you want one. Okay. But when choosing a math curriculum, here are a couple of things to help you save money and also save your sanity. Whatever math curriculum you use for one child, try and use the same curriculum for all of them. Because as a teacher, it's bad enough, it's hard enough, I should say, that you're going to be teaching one kid fifth grade math skills, another kid third grade math skills, another kid first grade math skills. That's hard enough. All right. So you want to use the same math curriculum. So once you get used to the format and the way that it works, and maybe the prep that's involved with a particular curriculum, then that part is easy. You're doing that for all the kids. Now all you're doing is just teaching them different concepts. Okay. So if you can, try and pick a math curriculum for all of them using the same publisher. Okay. Also keep in mind the way that you teach, right? So if you need a script because you just feel more comfortable, then go with a curriculum that has very scripted lesson plans. Okay. But if you're more of I get it, I know how to do the math, or I don't need that, I just need the gist of it, I need some ideas, right? Then go with a curriculum that's more along those lines. Okay. Also, if you work from home or you work outside the home, or your kids are older and you really need them to be more independent, keep that in mind as well when you're picking out a math curriculum. Do you want a curriculum that's heavily teacher directed, where you need to sit with them to show them how to do it, teach them how to do it, use manipulatives maybe to teach them how to do it? Or do you need something that's more independent and self-directed? Okay, so keep that in mind. But the most important thing to keep in mind is your child's learning style, right? So if your kid is very auditory, then doing a workbook page a day is going to be very difficult for them, and they're not going to get it. Okay. If your child's very visual, a textbook would be more up their alley, right? If your kid is tactile, then sitting there and filling in a worksheet every day is probably not going to teach them in a way that they understand it. So keep those things in mind when you're picking out a curriculum. When your kids are older, another thought is you narrow down maybe 3 or 4 math curriculums you like or you understand and that your budget can afford, and then show those to your middle schooler or your high schooler and say, look, these are the 4 we can afford. These are the 4 that we could do this year. You pick the one that you like the best, and let them do some research. Let them do the sample problems online. Let them see if it speaks to them. Okay. So get your kids involved when they're a little bit older. Now, when it comes to math curriculum for the younger years, if you feel like you need to get one, I highly recommend Mathematical Reasoning by Critical Thinking publishers. I just think those are hands down the best ones for younger kids because they're easier on the eyes. There's less problem on each page. They do it in a very problem solving kind of a way, but there's lots of computation involved too. Okay. Love that one by Critical Thinking Press. It's called Mathematical Reasoning. I also like The Good and the Beautiful for the younger ones because it's free and they also have videos online that you could use. Okay. If your kids have dyscalculia, which is like a dyslexia version in math, Right Start Math is really good. It was developed for kids with that. It has games, it has hands-on activities, all that kind of stuff. Okay. If your child learns very hands-on, or they're ADHD and they hyper focus on one subject at a time, then Math UC is great for those kids. Okay, because they teach one concept like multiplication from beginning to end. So they really dig into one or two particular math concepts before they move on to something else. And they do it with a hands-on approach. Okay. If your kid, math just kind of comes easy to them and you could pretty much just hand them a textbook and send them off and they can teach themselves pretty much. Saxon is great for that. If they need some help, some tutoring, and you're feeling like it's a little bit above your pay grade, you're not quite there, do Saxon or Singapore with Math and Nicole Lady. That is that's an awesome alternative to that. If your student loves or needs tactile, visual, and auditory, teaching textbooks is a great program for that because it's computer-based, it's self-directed. The computer teaches the lessons in very short little snippets, very eye-pleasing. They hear it, they see it, and then they type in their answers. And then they get immediate feedback. So you don't have them practicing 20 questions and getting all 20 of them wrong. And now they've learned it wrong 20 times. And now you have to undo it. You don't have that with teaching textbooks because they get immediate feedback. Okay. If they're in high school, again, if they're auditory, visual, and tactile, but you need them to be more self-directed, I love video text. The algebra course, that's a great one. They do algebra 1 and 2 in one course. And so you could get through both in 2 years or 3 years, depending on how you do it. Okay. So those are just some of my favorites. There are quite a few. I love master books as well, because that's more of problem solving in their questioning. If your kid is very they're a literature lover and they love stories, then Life with Fred is a great way to do math because Fred teaches math through stories. So there's a lot of different curriculum out there. Just try to match the teaching style with what meets your needs, but also the textbook that meets your child's learning style. And if possible, use the same curriculum through and through. So do Good and the Beautiful with everybody, or do teaching textbooks with everybody, or do Saxon with everybody. So that way you only have to train yourself one time. Okay. All right. So, shameless plug here. This is a new series that I'm doing called Today Did We, and I'm going to be, addressing different academic and enrichment subjects throughout the day. I started with the first one, Today Did We Do Math? Because my new book, it's coming out in 2026, and it's basically this checklist. Today, did we problem solve? Today, did we read? Today, did we write? And so each of the videos that I'm going to be doing in the series will be answering each of those 9 questions. That's basically what the whole entire new book is about. Okay. So if you would like to be a part of the book launch team, or you would like more information about it, or you just want to know when it comes out so you can pre-order it or get it in your hands, then make sure you subscribe to coffeewithcarrie.org so that you will get those updates when they start coming out. All right. So thanks again for joining me. Remember, a child's experience or success with math depends on 2 things: their positive or negative experiences with math. And I hope this video has shown you tons of different things you could do in order to give your child more positive experiences with math, but also the parents' attitude about math. So if you have math anxiety, you have some math phobias, let's work on changing that for you too. Let's put the fun back in the fundamentals, moms. All right, we'll see you for the next one.